All right, so if you thought part one of Wotan the Overman was intense, well, you haven't seen anything yet. The battle for humanity's soul, that was just the warm-up. Now we're going cosmic. We're talking about a metaphysical wager where the stakes are, quite literally, everything. And that's really the key thing to grasp here, right? It's all about the scale. Part one, that was a war on the ground, a war against what was called the herd, human mediocrity. But part two, man, this is a whole different beast. It's basically cosmic horror. The game has changed, and Wotan isn't just a player anymore, he's the main piece on the board. So you'd think after winning, after making this huge proclamation of the eternal recurrence, he'd get a break, right? Nope, not even close. His fight is far from over. In fact, his entire life becomes what the story calls the ongoing proof. Think about that. Every single thing he does, every breath he takes, is now evidence in this massive cosmic bet between creation and, well, nothingness. He's not just fighting anymore. He is the argument. So this next phase kicks off with Wotan, having to face the music, so to speak. He's got to grapple with what his victory actually costs him. And let me tell you, the price of godhood is steep. And where do we find him? Not on a throne surrounded by cheering crowds. No, he's standing all alone in a trashed marketplace. The text calls it glorious isolation, which is just, wow, what an image. By becoming the so-called meaning of the earth, he's been totally cut off from it. It's this deep, crushing loneliness. And this is where things get really interesting, because his entire being starts to shift. Remember in part one, he was the master of his will, right? He was the archer aiming his bow at the future he wanted to create. Well, that's all changed. He's not the one pulling the string anymore. He is the will. He's become the arrow itself. The story has this incredible metaphor for it, the arrow of longing. He's just launched. He's a projectile shot into the great unknown on this relentless, unstoppable path. And there's no going back. No home port, nothing. And what do you call that state? The text calls it terrible freedom. It's such a perfect paradox. I mean, on one hand, he's got everything he wanted. Ultimate power, total sovereignty, no more rules, no more limits, nobody telling him what to do. But on the other hand, it's horrifying. It's just this endless, grinding repetition without any destination, without any comfort, without anything to hold on to. And you know how these stories go. When the hero levels up, the villains have to level up too. As Wotan climbs up to his new home on Neo Arcadia, this new, harsh Olympus, his enemies evolve right alongside him. And trust me, they get way, way scarier. The whole dynamic flips. Mephistopheles isn't just some pesky trickster anymore. Now he's the architect. He's an empowered tempter, and he's building a trap specifically designed to catch a god. And his weapon of choice? A guy named Faustus, who is basically Wotan's dark reflection, his distorted mirror. He has all of Wotan's power, but none of the control. He's just a slave to his own endless hunger. And that really gets to the heart of what this new fight is all about. See, Wotan isn't battling mediocre people anymore. He's literally fighting a shadow. He's fighting a dark version of himself, a terrifying glimpse of what his own will to power could turn into if you took away all the purpose, all the creativity, and just left the raw, empty ambition. You couldn't get a clearer opposition. Wotan is all about creation. He forges new values out of absolutely nothing. Faustus, on the other hand, is the consumer of ruins. The guy doesn't build a single thing. He just devours what's left. They call him the Carrion King, and he's basically pure negation in living form. Okay, so this huge philosophical battle, it actually becomes physical in the story's climax. It's this incredible war of symbols, where their ideologies are literally built into the world around them. Mephistopheles' big move is to create something called the Tower of Inferno. And get this, the building materials are insane. He literally weaponizes the apathy and stagnation of the last men from the first part of the story. He builds a mountain out of ash and rot. It's a monument to decay, a physical contract signed with nothingness itself. So how does Wotan fight back? With an act of pure, defiant creation. He performs what's called a crimson miracle. He pours his own life force, his blood ink, into a dead, withered tree and forces it to bloom into this incredible, vibrant emerald spire. It's his monument to life. It's his big, bold statement that he refuses to sign that contract with nothingness. But here's the thing. Even after this amazing symbolic win, the story doesn't just wrap up with a neat little bow. Part 2 leaves us hanging with some really tough, unsettling questions about what Wotan's freedom really means. Because the real threat was never the tower. It's something much more insidious, the god-sized cage. Mephistopheles takes Wotan's old foe, that idea of slave morality, and supercharges it. It's no longer just a human flaw. It's been weaponized into a metaphysical trap big enough and strong enough to hold a god. And that brings us to the one big, haunting question that hangs over this entire story. Wotan got everything he wanted. He won. But is that sheer force of will, the will to power, is it actually enough? Is it enough to keep a god going against the soul-crushing weight of an endless, repetitive existence? The story doesn't give us an easy answer. Instead, it leaves us with this final, absolutely chilling metaphor. It says Wotan is like a sailor who proudly burns his last map, cheering for his own freedom from any path or destination. But he's doing it all while standing on a sinking ship. He sees the water pooling around his ankles, and he has the audacity to call it freedom. And all the while he's celebrating, the shadows are just waiting under the waves. Mephistopheles and Faustus, they're not in a hurry. They're patient. They know that every fire, no matter how bright, eventually goes out. And they're just waiting for the fire of Wotan's will to finally flicker and die, so they can rise up and rule the ruins. A pretty sobering final thought, huh? Makes you wonder what the true cost of that ultimate freedom really is.